First of all, my name is Diane Keller, and I am the president and the CEO here of the Ann Arbor Ypsilanti Regional Chamber. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I would like to especially thank all of our chamber members. I know that there are a number of you that have joined us, and we appreciate this opportunity that you have to help make us and our chamber successful. We appreciate your dues, and that orders us and enables us rather to support the programs that you have been asking for. So thank you so much for your continued support of the chamber. I would also like to thank our partners Hylant, not only for being an amazing business in our community, but also for bringing us timely and relevant information today to assist all of our members and the larger business community. Today, we're actually very pleased to have with you an expert from Hylant who will be discussing Michigan's new no-fault auto insurance reform, and then highlighting those changes that start beginning actually tomorrow. So today I'm excited to introduce to you Mark Holloway. He is the Vice President of Small Business and Personal Insurance for Hylant. He has also been with Hylant for 20 years now, almost 20 years, which is amazing. And I'm honored to let you know that Mark is also a former chair of the Ann Arbor Ypsilanti Regional Chamber. So Mark, thank you so very much for joining us today. I do want to let others know that following the presentation, Mark will have answer some questions. So if you would like to provide, put your questions in the chat box below, he will answer as many of those as he can get time for. So Mark, how are you?
Very good. Good morning, and thank you for having me today.
Thank you. We look forward to hearing this valuable information, and we appreciate everything that you're doing for our community and Hylant as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
And let you take it away.
All right, well, here we go. We're going to talk about an overview of Michigan's no-fault auto insurance changes this morning. So if you could go to the next slide, please. I wanted to start by just giving everyone a brief history of Michigan no-fault, just to kind of let you know how we got to where we are today. No-fault in the state of Michigan began in 1973. That's when it was officially started. And the goal back then was to basically make it a little easier and more efficient for auto insurance claims for consumers. Michigan has the strictest no-fault laws currently in the country. And it has really worked. I mean, it definitely sped up the process. In other states, if you don't have no-fault insurance, if you're a tort state, for example, and you get into a car accident, you actually have to, in some cases, sue the at-fault driver and go after their insurance company, and you have to be a lot more involved in the process. So the reason why no-fault insurance was formulated years ago was just to make that process speedier, more efficient for the consumers. In 1978, the MCCA, the Michigan Catastrophic Claims Association, was formed, and that was part of the no-fault system. So basically, when no-fault began in Michigan, there was also unlimited health benefits or personal injury protection, and obviously that can be a pretty costly, coverage, and the carriers are having trouble finding reinsurance for that. So they basically had to create the Michigan Catastrophic Claims Association to be the backstop for those claims that it initially started, $250,000. Now it's up to the MCCA is actually the backstop for any personal injury protection claim that goes over $580,000. If a claim is less than $580,000, your insurance company is actually on the hook for that first 580. Anything over that, then the Michigan Catastrophic Claims Association takes over, and that's been sort of one of the main issues why auto insurance has gotten so much attention over the years. The last year, July 1st of 2019, was the highest assessment on record at $220 per vehicle, and that obviously adds up when you have the more cars you have. If you can go on to the next. There we go. So in 1990s and all the way up, even through, just recently, there's been a lot of reform efforts over the years. There's been, just different legislation that was, proposed. It's even went to the ballot a few times in 1992 and 94, and lots of different proposals. And it was pretty surprising, actually, last year that the legislatures got together and were able to make something finally happen to give consumers choice. And that's basically what this is all about on July 2nd, is for the first time in many, many, many years, the consumers are actually going to have choice when it comes to their personal injury protection level of benefit. And the next slide there we go. So this is just a little bit of the current state of no fault in Michigan. Lots of media attention, lots of press coverage. There's been lots of radio commercials, TV ads, social media. And a lot of the headlines, have read that Detroit and Michigan lead the nation with the highest auto insurance rates in the country. And that is, there's definitely some truth to that, depending on where you live and what sort of coverage you have. There are pockets in Michigan where the rates are actually pretty competitive compared to the rest of the country when you consider how much coverage we get. We are the only state in the country that actually has unlimited personal injury protection benefit. The next closest state is New Jersey at $250,000 of coverage. Michigan, the way the current law is it's unlimited. So I mean, it's big benefit compared to all the other states that are out there. Some states are as low as $5,000 of medical payment coverage. And here's just some of the headlines that you're also probably hearing or seeing out there. There's a lot of misinformation, unfortunately, as well. A lot of when they're talking about how much the claims are going to potentially drop, or I'm sorry, the premiums are going to drop. You're hearing numbers of 55% under the new Michigan law. Cheaper car insurance, big cuts to auto insurance fees in 2020. So there's been a lot of information out there. There's definitely going to be some reductions in premium depending on the level of coverage you choose. But the media is not always really clear that it's a lot of clients and consumers are thinking that this is going to be a 55% drop to their entire insurance premium. And it's really only affecting the personal injury protection portion of the premium that also includes the MCCA fee. And here's really what it comes down to. Here, this is pretty much the new law in a nutshell, is personal injury protection choice. So on July 2nd, actually, so in 2 days is when this is going to start. A lot of consumers, you should have, if you have a renewal that's in July, you should have already started receiving information from your insurance company. In some cases, almost 2 months ago, some of our carriers have started sending out information to their clients. They want to be well out ahead of the renewal. So the first choice is that you can still keep and maintain your unlimited personal injury protection coverage that you have today. So that's a great thing. And we're actually seeing about 75% of our clients are keeping that unlimited medical choice. The next choice is a $500,000 limit. So you can, instead of having unlimited like you have now, I see a question come in and I will get to those in a second here. You have a $500,000 limit. That's your second choice. You can choose a $250,000 limit. You can even choose a $50,000 limit if you have Medicaid, and you have to have that to qualify. Or you can actually choose no coverage. You can actually opt out, and there's two ways to do that. If you have Medicare, or if you have what they call qualified health coverage through your employer. So these are basically the 6 choices that are out there for consumers, and this is basically what the big change is on July 2nd. Since 1973, we have had no choice. You were basically forced to buy unlimited personal injury protection in the state of Michigan if you were purchasing auto insurance. As of July 2nd, you'll have these choices. And again, you'll start seeing, you should start seeing well before your renewal, information from your insurance carrier providing, what the different rates and things like that are for these choices that you may qualify for. We're having lots of conversations with our clients about these every day. I'm going to read one of the questions here is, if you select less than unlimited PIP, do you have to select whether your insurance is full or excess for the medical coverage in relation to your traditional health insurance? That's a great question. That actually kind of depends on the health insurance that you have with your employer. So that's another thing that we're doing or encouraging our clients to do is ahead of time is definitely check with your employer, probably the human resources department, to find out what kind of health insurance, if your health insurance through your employer provides coverage for auto related accidents, and if they do, will they provide it on a full primary or an excess basis? So that's basically what we encourage our clients to do. So there are a lot of conversations that we're having with clients. We are seeing some employer in some health plans, employer-sponsored health plans are actually preparing a 1-page, 2-page letter, almost a statement of benefits that basically tells their members, their employees that have health coverage, what level of coverage they have. And we've seen it, on one extreme, there's carriers that have full personal injury protection, for auto-related accidents, and they'll cover the benefits. And we actually see some private self-funded plans where they exclude auto-related accidents. So something that we definitely encourage everyone to get with your employer ahead of time and find out what kind of health benefits that you have. One of the things that we're finding is the rules are pretty complicated in terms of PIP choice, and this is all set up through the state of Michigan. There's actually a 6-page personal injury protection selection form that you will have to review and sign. Most of the insurance companies that we work with are actually making those documents available electronically. We're seeing them emailed. They will mail them as well in some cases, and you have to review the form, make your PIP choice. There's a few sections where you actually have to initial and then sign the form designating what you want your choice to be. And there's a lot of new terms. Things like allowable expenses is in there. Things like PIP. Basically, the rules are changing the personal injury protection benefits for medical expenses, but not wages or survivor benefits. Not everyone qualifies for each coverage option. The 6 choices, there are certain things, for example, if you want to waive PIP, you want to waive your PIP protection altogether, you have to have Medicare to do that, or you have to have what they call the qualified health coverage. So here's some other important aspects of it. So here's, how much are we going to save? How much are you going to save as a consumer? There are mandated rate reductions from the state of Michigan. And the mandated rate reductions, actually, these are percentages that include the personal injury protection, and they also include the MCCA fee that's part of that. And currently, most people are paying approximately $220 per vehicle for the MCCA fee. And that varies, plus or minus a few dollars by carrier, because they do allow insurance companies to charge small fees in administering and collecting those funds. So, some people will pay 220, 222, 230, 240, just kind of depends on the carrier. Um, the good news is, if you keep the unlimited personal injury protection option that you have today, you're still going to see on average about a 10% reduction in your coverage or in your PIP premiums and the MCCA. So that's the great news, is you can still keep the unlimited coverage, and you should see a reduction in your PIP and MCCA fees. If you go to the $500,000 medical option, you're going to see on average about a 20% PIP MCCA reduction. 250 will be a 35% reduction. The $50,000 limit is 45. And if you have qualifying health coverage or Medicare and you choose to waive PIP altogether, you will see, in fact, 100% reduction. You basically will no longer pay personal injury protection premium or the MCCA fee. So these are the big issues, and I guess sort of the big changes. There is a rate freeze in the PIP for the next 8 years until 2028. So there's a good news there, for the consumers as well. And it's just on the personal injury protection premiums, that rate freeze. So here's another a big part of, hopefully long term, this is what's going to make this sustainable, is there is now in starting in 2021. So they've introduced what they call a fee schedule. And that's been a big challenge for the unlimited personal injury protection for many years in the state of Michigan. And what has helped to drive our rates up is currently there is no fee schedule in place for auto insurance, personal injury protection. So if somebody gets into an auto insurance accident, the hospitals, the doctor's offices, rehab clinics, things like that, basically can charge, whatever they want to in terms of the fee, versus like if there was a health insurance provider that negotiated a fee schedule, Medicare, Medicaid, workers' comp, other coverage products like that actually have schedules in place where there's a maximum fee. Auto insurance has never had that. So in 2021, they will start to introduce a new fee schedule for the health benefits that are provided by auto insurance policies, and it will be phased in over 3 years. So there's a bit of a lag here. It's going to take 4 years or so before we really start to see the full effects of the fee schedule. And the fee schedule is very complicated. In short, it's basically about 240% of what the Medicare fee schedules are today. So, 240% is still a pretty big number compared to Medicare, but it's better than what we have today. And, from an actuarial standpoint, the insurance companies, once they have fixed fee schedules in place, and it's been implemented for a while, they'll be able to, really tie into the rates better than they have been able to in the past. But it's going to take some time. Again, fee schedule does not start until July of next year, and then it phases in over the next following 3 years. So it'll be interesting to see where we are in 4 years or so as that gets phased in. This is sort of an unintended consequence to some degree. It's a very complicated process and how this was all written. It was written very quickly. There's many pages to the new updates to the laws. And unfortunately, one of the unintended consequences of these changes is there potentially in the future could be more tort lawsuit could increase. And the reason why is one of the reasons is right now in the state of Michigan, you have unlimited medical. So if you get into a car accident, your insurance company is going to pay for your health benefits without limit, regardless. Going forward, you don't know who you may get into a car accident with. So, for example, if you're driving down the road and you get into a bad car accident and you're at fault and you injure the other driver or drivers, you don't, let's say they had Medicare and let's say they opted out of personal injury protection altogether. So now the only health coverage they have comes from their Medicare policy. And Medicare policies can be great and there's Medicare supplements, but there's a lot of coverages in there that personal injury protection covers that Medicare does not. So now you can actually be sued for health benefits from drivers that you injured if you're at fault. And there's actually, they've changed, even how those limits, how the laws apply there, even to make it a little bit easier for that to happen. So we don't know what that looks like yet. I mean, there's a lot of sort of proposed language out there to maybe fix some of these unintended consequences in the laws, but there's not going to be any changes. I mean, it's basically what I'm being told is they're going to let the courts decide, some of those unfortunately, as some of these accidents play out. Another thing that has changed is currently in the state of Michigan, the bodily injury liability coverage has been at $20,000 per person, $40,000 per accident for many years. There have been no inflationary increases to that. That will actually more than double on July 2nd. So for folks that are maybe carrying lower liability limits, if you're carrying the state minimum, which is $20,000 per person, $40,000 per accident, on July 2nd, that increases to $50,000 per person, $100,000 per accident. And along with the personal injury protection forms that the insurance companies are going to have to send out to get clients to sign off to indicate which level of coverage they want, there's also going to be, I think it's 2 or 3 pages of additional forms that clients will need to make their choice for bodily injury coverage. If you don't make a choice, if you do nothing, if you have higher than those that 5,100, nothing you're going to need to do. But the default coverage will actually be $250,000 per person, $500,000 per accident. So if you do nothing and you have lower limits now, it may actually go up to a higher limit than what you want. So just again, some more paperwork, some more, the consumers are going to have to pay attention to and have a discussion, or a conversation with their insurance company to make sure that, that they're finding out what it's going to cost in premium, for example. I mean, liability premiums typically aren't, it's not all that significant to go to a higher liability limit, but everybody's going to have to pay some attention to that. There is some concern out there that because of the potential for increased lawsuits with these law changes, that people may need to have higher liability limits than they've had in the past. So we definitely encourage, clients to look at getting higher liability limits. If they don't have an umbrella policy or an excess liability policy in place already, we're encouraging clients to look at that option as well. An umbrella policy actually gives you excess coverage over your bodily injury limits on your and your property damage on your underlying auto policy. So some complications that have been added there as well. There was a question that came in: can selection be changed at each renewal? Yes, it sure can, and you don't even have to wait for a renewal. That's a great question. I mean, it basically you can change coverage midterm. You don't have to wait for your renewal, so that's something to keep in mind as well. A lot of people think that they have to do something on July 2nd. We've had a lot of clients say, hey, I'm happy the way things are right now. I don't want to fool with this. I'm just going to wait for my policy to renew. So if you have a policy that renewed on June 30th, for example, that policy is good and in place until June 30th of next year, or 6 months out, depending on your insurance company. And if you make some choices now, and year goes by and you think, what, I'm going to revisit this next year, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So you can change these coverages each and every renewal. So that's a great question. So some of the things In summary, so Michigan's current auto insurance system has the highest benefit levels of any state, and we've had for a very long time. But we have had, some of the highest premiums as well. So this is, I think, just overall, it's a good thing because it definitely does give the consumer more choice. Um, Something to in another point here is the state of Michigan has some of the highest uninsured rates as well in the country because of our high premiums. So we're hoping that this will help some of that, longer term, as sort of, the fee schedules come into place. We hope to see more consistency with rate increases in the future. um, what else? The legislation, the cost control measures, the fee schedules, they're very complex. They're going to take some time to, sort of figure out and sort of, figure into the current rating structures. That's why the insurance part of the legislation actually has the 8-year rate freeze on PIP, is just to sort of let that, play out. Looks like we have another question here. Can you touch on the terms used regarding healthcare coverage, primary versus excess? Yeah, so primary coverage is basically is who's going to pay the medical insurance bills first. Is it going to be your auto insurance carrier, or is it going to be your health insurance policy that you have through your employer, or maybe it's a private health insurance plan? What we have found over the years, you go back 10, 15, 20 years ago, most health insurance policies out there seem to provide to be primary. So if you had health insurance through your employer back in the day, they on most cases they were primary. What we saw over the years, though, and kind of what got us to this point too, is most health insurance companies out there started either excluding auto insurance benefits altogether, auto insurance coverage altogether, or they started going to an excess basis. So I encourage everybody to check out with your check your health and health with your health care provider, see if they have a statement, because we are seeing U of M, for example. I saw somebody shared, a client of ours shared a statement that they had put out basically saying how their health plan works. Um, so if you have an excess policy, basically they're going to look for your auto insurance company to pay first. And this can be a big issue, because what we see in the past, we've seen situations where somebody thought they had primary coverage from their health insurance policy through their employer. They had an auto insurance claim, turned it in. They're significantly injured in a hospital, not really able to pay attention to the bills and things like that that are coming in at home. And what happens is you get two insurance companies that are kind of, I don't want to say fighting, but trying to figure out who's primary and who's excess. In the meantime, bills aren't getting paid. And we've seen situations where credit's been affected because it should have been written on a primary basis, but it was written on an excess basis. And now the auto insurance company, is charging a deductible and fees. I mean, it gets complicated. So it's definitely, our default is if you don't know, go with primary, and don't choose excess until you have something in your hands from your health insurance provider that tells you exactly how their health insurance policy covers auto related accidents. That's definitely a great question. Another thing to keep in mind, if you, let's say you make your choice today on July 2nd, you're working for an employer and you have a wonderful, traditional health insurance policy that's covering auto related accidents on a primary basis. But let's say in 6 months, you no longer work for that company. You change jobs, you start a consulting firm, you're on your own, and your health insurance coverage isn't as good as it has been. Something you want to do is revisit your choice that you made there. You might, if you chose a lower limit, for example, if you went excess versus primary, you may want to update that. So something we definitely, and that kind of circles back to the question before that, can these be changed at each renewal? Yes, but you don't have to wait for your renewal either. Life changes quickly for a lot of people, so there's something that you'll have to kind of revisit. So what we're seeing is, there's a lot of complexity, a lot of, it's a complex change. There's lots of nuance. There's lots of things that aren't going to be sort of figured out until the courts get involved. So it's something that you're just going to have to start, sort of probably doing a little bit more research on. Another thing that's changing is some of the way the coverage actually works in terms of household members. In the state of Michigan, the way it is today, we had the order of priority, they call it, for personal injury protection, went pretty deep. And if you were injured in an accident, let's say you didn't even have auto insurance, but if you were a pedestrian, or riding on a bike, they would basically find, looking at the order of priority, to figure out where the coverage would come from. That's going to be limited going forward. So something else to pay attention to, and have conversations with your agent. If you have students away at school, for example, definitely you want to talk about that situation with your agent. If you have non-resident relatives in your household that are living there temporarily, you want to have that discussion with your agent as well. There's a lot of nuance and a lot of sort of unintended changes. I don't know if they're unintended, but a lot of changes that people didn't think about, so that the coverage is not as broad as it has been in the past for household members, pedestrians, things like that. I think we have another question as well on what about relatives living in your household, dependents, children, spouses, partners, will they have their own medical or auto coverage? Well, so that's a great question. And again, so this is something that I encourage you to sort of look at your talk with your current provider to tell them exactly what your situation is. So you can, they can do the research, because this is going to be different, and it's different than it used to be. You're just not going to have that automatic coverage that everybody used to have in the state of Michigan. Will they have their own medical or auto coverage? It depends. It depends on how old they are. It depends if they're, blood relatives. It depends if they're dependents of yours. Partners, for example, that's something you want to be careful of. If you have a domestic partner, but you're not actually married, you want to have that conversation with your auto insurance carrier to make sure that they're okay with that situation. No longer, the days are gone where just everybody's going to be automatically covered. You're going to want to make sure that you see, for example, if you do have that situation where you have two domestic partners that aren't married, in my opinion, you want to make sure both names are listed on that policy as a named insured. And not all insurance companies will do that. Some companies are old school, and unfortunately, they don't. You have to be a married couple before they will put the names on there. So just things like that you're going to want to pay a little bit more attention to than you used to. A lot of nuance to this, for sure. And it looks like we've got most of the questions that have come in. Does anybody else have any other questions out there? If not, we do have a nice resource page as well that I think the chamber has shared, that we'll make sure we'll share again. It might even be on their website. That just has a lot of good information. A lot of links to good articles that are written. We had on a recent attorney client of ours that we posted a great article on what his advice and recommendations were. So there's a lot of good information on there that I encourage you to reach out to, and also encourage you to reach out to your current auto insurance carrier or agent. However you communicate with them, they should be able to help you through the process. You don't have to wait for your renewal. We're getting a lot of calls from clients that are, December renewal or February renewal next year, and we're having that conversation now. And yes, we just had a question. Just renewed their auto insurance covered in June. Will I be able to take advantage of the new plan now? Yes, for sure. So definitely we encourage you to reach back out to us, but I'm going to make a note right now and reach back out to you, and we can definitely have a new conversation going forward with the changes.
Mark, thank you so very much. Obviously, there have been a lot of questions, some great information. We will make sure that each of the people, individuals that are on our call or webinar today, will actually get the information and the link that you were just discussing from Hylant that helps cover all the resources of these new changes in regard to the no-fault auto insurance. So thank you so much for being able to answer just a whole variety of questions. I know it's a complicated issue. I myself am going to go back and check some of our chamber's policy and make sure that I understand exactly who's primary and who's excess. And thank you. If we don't have any more questions, I think that we will make sure that everybody gets a copy of this so they can refer back to the webinar.
We did get one more question, Diane.
Oh,
and
great.
It says, what happens under the existing policy until renewal? Nothing. You basically you have the contract in place from when you had your renewal. So, and that's why we do have some clients, because the coverage is actually better now today than it will be tomorrow because of the way they've changed, some of the household residents, non-resident relative issues. So we have a lot of clients that are just saying, I'm going to keep it until my policy renews. They're not going to change a thing. So you're more than welcome to do that as well. And then one other, looks like, actually that's kind of a similar question that we already answered. So thank you very much. I hope everybody has a great day. I hope everybody's doing well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. We appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.